The sound of heavy boots echoed through the metal hallways, each step sending a vibration through the cold floor. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the occasional hum of the ship's engines. The air smelled faintly of ozone and metal. But there was something else, too, a hint of danger. A feeling that something was about to change. Lucas walked down the corridor, his gaze focused on the flickering lights above. He wasn't sure why he had been summoned here, but he knew it couldn't be good. The ship, a vast intergalactic cruiser, was home to many strange beings. But none were quite like her, Zara, the alien warrior. She was a tall, imposing figure, her armor gleaming under the harsh lights. Her eyes, like molten gold, seemed to pierce right through him every time they met. Lucas had never seen an alien like her before. Her beauty was undeniable. But so was the power that radiated from her every movement as he turned the corner. He saw her standing at the end of the hallway. Her back was straight, her posture perfect, and her expression unreadable. Her uniform, a sleek, form-fitting suit of silver and black, was pristine, except for the small tear along the side. The tear wasn't accidental. She had done it on purpose. Zara didn't speak at first. She just stared at him with those burning eyes. Her lips curled into a slow, knowing smirk. It made his heart race. "You're the only human who can handle my body," she said, her voice smooth like velvet, but laced with something dangerous. Lucas blinked, unsure whether she meant it as a joke or if it was something more. Before he could respond, she reached down, her fingers grazing the edge of her uniform. With a single, swift motion, she tore it open, the fabric ripping like paper. His breath caught in his throat as the fabric fell to the floor, revealing her perfectly toned alien form beneath. Her muscles were unlike anything he had ever seen, strong, defined, yet graceful. He couldn't look away, but he also couldn't speak. The confidence she exuded was overwhelming, and it was clear that she knew exactly what effect she was having on him. Zara stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. "You're the only one who can keep up with me," she whispered, her voice dropping an octave. Her lips were inches from his ear now, her breath warm against his skin. Lucas swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. He had always been told to keep his distance from the powerful alien species aboard this ship, but something about Zara felt different. There was no fear in her eyes, only challenge. And Lucas, for the first time in a long while, found himself wanting to accept it. Before he could say anything, Zara pulled away and turned her back to him. "Follow me," she commanded, her voice like steel. Without another word, she walked ahead, her hips swaying with every step. Lucas could only stare, his mind racing. What had just happened, and what was she expecting of him? He followed her, unsure of what to expect, but knowing that his life would never be the same again. The journey was only just beginning, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for what lay ahead. "Let me know if you'd like me to adjust or expand any part." Lucas barely had time to process what had just happened. Zara, the alien warrior, had made her intentions clear in a way he never imagined. Her boldness, her presence, everything about her made him question what he thought he knew about this mission and the people he was dealing with. He followed her through the ship's corridors, trying his best not to let his mind wander too far. His thoughts raced as he struggled to understand what kind of game she was playing. She had taken a great deal of interest in him, a mere human. And now it seemed like she expected something from him. The hallway stretched on endlessly, its lights flickering overhead. The ship was vast, like a city in space. Rows of doors lined the walls, each leading to some unknown part of the ship. The crew aboard this vessel came from every corner of the galaxy, but none of them had ever been as intimidating as Zara. She stopped suddenly, turning around to face him. The sudden movement caught him off guard, and he almost bumped into her. "You're quiet," she observed, her golden eyes studying him with a sharpness that felt like it could cut through steel. Her gaze was unsettling yet magnetic. I thought. You would say something. After all, you're the one who followed me. Lucas swallowed, unsure of what to say. His instincts screamed at him to say something witty, something clever, but the words wouldn't come. He couldn't seem to form any coherent thought with her standing so close, looking at him the way she did. I didn't expect this, he muttered, his voice rough. Zara tilted her head slightly, almost as though she were curious. She took a step closer, her boots clicking against the metal floor. The air between them seemed to thicken, and Lucas felt the temperature rise, as if her presence alone was enough to heat the room. She smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile full of power, full of a strange sort of hunger. That's your problem, human. You think you can understand us, but you don't, she said, her tone low and almost seductive. She reached out, placing a hand on his chest. It wasn't rough, but it was firm, sending an electric jolt through his body. But you will. You'll learn quickly enough. Before Lucas could respond, she turned and walked down the hall again, her hips swaying with every step, the soft sound of her boots the only thing he could hear. He couldn't help but stare at her, feeling a pull, a connection he couldn't explain. He wanted to say something, to stop her, but he remained silent. Something told him that speaking up now would be a mistake. They arrived at a large door at the end of the hallway. Zara's hand pressed against a panel beside it, and the door slid open with a low hum. She stepped inside without looking back. Lucas hesitated for a moment, his feet frozen to the spot. There was something about the way she had touched him, the way she commanded his attention, that left him both intrigued and unsettled. He had always been good at keeping his distance, at maintaining control over situations. But this was different. Zara was different. He shook his head, clearing his thoughts, and followed her inside. The room was a sharp contrast to the cold metallic hallways. The walls were lined with soft, glowing lights, and the atmosphere was warmer, almost intimate. In the center of the room stood a massive circular table, covered with various tools and strange objects that Lucas couldn't identify. The air smelled of something rich, like incense mixed with a faint metallic temps. Was no telling what purpose this room served, but it certainly wasn't a place for casual meetings. Zara was already at the table, her back to him as she fiddled with one of the objects, her fingers delicate yet precise. She moved with the grace of a dancer, her body language still exuding power, as though everything she did was a calculated move. She didn't look up as he entered. Instead, she continued her work, leaving Lucas to stand awkwardly in the doorway. "You're here to learn," she said suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. "Not just about me, but about the galaxy, about the power that humans like you can't even begin to understand. That's why you're here, human. You'll be trained. You'll be tested." Lucas wasn't sure if he was supposed to be excited or afraid. Zara had always spoken in riddles, her words heavy with meaning, but she never explained what she truly wanted from him. He needed to know. He needed to understand what he was getting himself into. Tested for what? Lucas asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty running through him. "Why me?" Zara finally turned to face him, her golden eyes locking onto his with a piercing intensity. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something in the way she held herself that made it clear she wasn't used to explaining herself to anyone. Yet, she did. "You're human," she said, the word rolling off her tongue with a hint of amusement. "That alone makes you unique. You think you're weak, that you're fragile. But you're wrong." She walked closer to him, each step deliberate. "Humans have a resilience that none of us can match. That's why I chose you." Lucas swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. This was the first time she had spoken so openly. And yet, It only made him more confused. Why had she chosen him? He was just a soldier, not special in any way. He certainly wasn't someone who would stand out to an alien like her. But there it was again. That pull, that magnetic force that kept drawing him to her. His mind was a whirlwind of questions. But before he could ask any more, Zara raised her hand, signaling for him to be quiet. "Enough questions," she said firmly, her voice commanding. "It's time to start your training." Training. Lucas didn't know what kind of training she meant, but the way she said it made him realize that there was no backing out now. He had already been drawn into this web, and he had no idea how deep it went. Without another word, Zara gestured for him to follow her once more. She walked toward the far side of the room, where a large, cylindrical machine hummed softly. Its purpose unclear. "Stand here," she instructed, pointing to a spot in front of the machine. "You'll need to be prepared for what's coming." Lucas stepped forward, his mind still racing. What had he gotten himself into? As he stood before the machine, he felt her eyes on him once more, and the feeling of being both wanted and tested surged within him. This was more than just an alien mission, it was something much bigger, and Zara, he was beginning to realize, was going to be the one to push him to his limits. The machine hummed to life as Zara stood beside it, her eyes glowing with anticipation. Lucas could feel the weight of the situation settling over him, a strange sense of both excitement and fear mingling within him. He had no idea what this training was going to involve, but the way Zara had described it made it clear that this was only the beginning. She nodded toward the machine. "Step inside," she commanded, her tone leaving no room for hesitation. Lucas hesitated for only a moment. His instincts told him to question everything, but this wasn't the time for doubt. The pull of Zara's presence was too strong, and he found himself obeying without thinking. He stepped toward the machine, which was now glowing with an eerie blue light. The surface of the cylinder seemed to shimmer, as though it was alive with energy. The moment Lucas entered, the door slid shut behind him with a soft click. He was enclosed in a small, transparent chamber, the air thick with tension. Zara's voice came through a speaker above him. "This will test your endurance, human. You'll have to survive the next few hours in here. There are no shortcuts, no easy way out. You either endure or you fail." Lucas stood still, trying to calm his breathing. Survive? What's inside? The machine. "You'll find out soon enough," Zara replied, her voice cold and distant. Before Lucas could respond, the machine came to life. The lights inside flickered, and the floor beneath his feet began to shift. It was as if the entire room was transforming. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the chamber, throwing Lucas off balance. He reached out to steady himself against the walls, but the air was thick with pressure. He could hear strange sounds, like whispers, surrounding him from every direction. Then the temperature dropped. His breath became visible, misting in the frigid air. He shivered, pulling his arms tighter around himself, trying to keep warm, but the cold seemed to seep into his very bones. The chill was like nothing he had ever felt before, a biting, unrelenting cold that made him wish for warmth, for comfort, anything to escape this freezing torture, as if in response to his thoughts. The temperature suddenly spiked, becoming unbearably hot. Sweat immediately began to bead on his skin as the chamber's heat rose to a suffocating level. The air grew thick and heavy, and every breath felt like it was burning his lungs. It felt as though the machine was testing him in ways he couldn't comprehend. The changes were constant, rapid, and overwhelming. One moment, he was freezing. The next, he was suffocating. His body ached, and his mind raced with the constant, shifting environment. He had no idea how long he had been in the machine. Minutes. Hours. The only thing that mattered was pushing through. His mind kept screaming at him to give up, to escape, but something in him refused. Zara had warned him about endurance, and despite everything, Lucas wanted to prove he could handle whatever. She threw at him, he pushed through the heat, gritting his teeth, willing himself to keep standing. His muscles burned with exhaustion, and his mind began to feel foggy from the constant fluctuations in temperature. He couldn't focus on anything. But through it, something inside him was awakening. He was learning it wasn't just about physical endurance. It was about mental strength, about surviving the impossible, just as Lucas thought he couldn't take it any longer. The environment shifted again, this time bringing a moment of silence. The heat and cold stopped, and the strange whispers faded. Everything was still. The pressure in the air lifted, and the lights dimmed to a gentle glow. For a few long seconds, Lucas allowed himself to collapse against the cool surface of the chamber. His body was drenched in sweat, his clothes sticking to him. His heart raced, but his breathing began to slow as the silence enveloped him. "I see you're still standing." Zara's voice echoed from the speakers, her tone as calm and emotionless. As ever, Lucas lifted his head, barely able to focus his eyes. "What was that?" "That," Zara replied with a hint of amusement, "was just the beginning. You've passed the first phase." Lucas couldn't believe what he was hearing. First phase. There was more. The chamber door opened with a soft hiss, and he stumbled out, his legs weak beneath him. Zara was waiting for him, her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on him as if evaluating his every move. "You survived the environment change?" she said, her voice filled with a strange sense of pride. "You didn't give up, even when your body begged you to. But now comes the real test. You're about to face something far more dangerous than just extreme conditions." Lucas could barely stand, but he managed to meet her gaze. "What do you mean?" Before Zara could respond, the lights in the room flickered once more, and a low, rumbling sound filled the air. The ground beneath him began to shake as if something massive was approaching suddenly. The floor cracked open, and from the dark pit that had appeared beneath them, a massive creature emerged, its body covered in thick, armored plates. The creature had multiple eyes that glowed an eerie red, and its sharp claws clicked against the floor as it crawled out, its menacing form towering over Lucas. Lucas's heart skipped a beat. This was the real test. Zara didn't move. She just stood there, her expression calm, as if she were watching a scene unfold in front of her that she had seen 1,000 times before. "You'll have to fight," she said, her voice low and serious. "This is where you prove your worth. Human, defeat this creature and you pass the second phase. Fail, and you're out." Lucas's eyes widened in disbelief. A creature like this, he didn't have weapons, he didn't have armor. He was just a man, standing before something far beyond his abilities. But Zara had already made it clear there was no turning back now. The creature let out a terrifying roar, snapping Lucas back to reality. He didn't know if he could survive this, but he had no choice. It was fight or die. The creature lunged, and Lucas barely had time to react. His body moved on instinct, his hands reaching for anything he could use to defend himself. This was it. This was his chance to prove that he wasn't just a weak human. The creature's claws scraped against the floor, its massive form closing in on Lucas. Every step it took seemed to shake the ground beneath him, the air thick with the smell of its rancid breath. It was a nightmare made real, a beast that seemed more monster than animal. And it was charging directly at him. Lucas's heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears. His mind raced, trying to come up with a plan, anything that could help him survive. But there was no time. The creature was already too close. Its eyes gleamed with hunger, its massive jaws snapping, ready to tear into him. Instinct kicked in. Lucas dove to the side, barely avoiding the creature's sharp claws as they slashed through the air where he had been standing just a moment before. The beast growled, frustrated, and turned quickly to face him. Its movements were fast, but Lucas was faster. He scrambled to his feet, his legs still weak from the previous tests. But the adrenaline pumping through him gave him the strength he needed. He glanced around desperately. The room was vast, but there was nothing he could use as a weapon. Nothing, except his own body. The floor was smooth and slick beneath his feet, making it difficult to maintain his balance, but he refused to back down. Zara's voice echoed in his mind. You either endure or you fail. The creature lunged again, its jaws wide open, aiming to bite down on him with terrifying force. Lucas didn't have time to think. He dove forward just as the creature's teeth snapped shut behind him. His body hit the ground hard, the air rushing out of his lungs from the impact, but he quickly rolled and sprang back to his feet. The creature was on him again, its claws slashing through the air like knives. Lucas ducked and weaved, his heart racing, his body screaming from the exhaustion of the previous tests. The cold sweat on his skin mixed with the heat of the creature's breath as it hunted him like prey. Zara's eyes were fixed on him, but she said nothing. She wasn't offering help. She wasn't offering encouragement. She was simply watching, as though this moment was just another test in a long series of trials. Lucas realized something. Then this wasn't just about surviving. It was about proving that he had the strength to overcome anything. To defeat this creature, he had to use more than just physical skill. He had to think, adapt, and push past his fear. The creature roared again, its claws swiping at him. Lucas saw his chance, a small gap between its legs, just wide enough for him to slide through. He didn't hesitate. He charged, diving toward the gap with everything he had. He felt the claws rake across his back, but he didn't stop. His hand reached out, and he grabbed onto something. Anything. It was a piece of broken debris, sharp and jagged, lying on the ground beneath the creature. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. He gripped it tightly, feeling the pain from the creature's swipe, but he ignored it. He had to survive. With a grunt of effort, Lucas swung the debris upward, aiming for the creature's underbelly. The sharp end of the jagged piece sank into the creature's soft flesh, and it let out a howl of pain. The beast staggered back, its body writhing in agony. The creature tried to retaliate, but Lucas was already on his feet, moving faster than he had ever moved before. He couldn't stop now. Guy had to keep going. He darted around the creature, avoiding its snapping jaws and swiping claws. Every time it lunged at him, he was a step ahead. His body ached, his muscles screamed in protest, but he didn't let up. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for his chance to prove that humans could be more than just weak beings in the eyes of the galaxy. Lucas saw his opportunity when the creature reared back, preparing to strike. Its eyes were filled with rage, but it was also wounded, slowing down. He could see the weakness in it, the way it was struggling to maintain its balance. This was his moment. With a burst of energy, Lucas sprinted toward the creature, his body moving on pure instinct. He leaped, driving the jagged piece of debris deeper into its chest, right at its heart. The creature let out one final roar before collapsing to the ground with a heavy thud. Its life snuffed out in an instant. For a long moment, there was only silence. Lucas stood over the creature's lifeless body, his chest heaving as he gasped for air. Sweat and blood mixed on his skin, and the adrenaline slowly began to fade, leaving him with a deep exhaustion that weighed him down. His body trembled, but he didn't allow himself to collapse. Not yet. He had done it. He had survived. Zara's footsteps echoed behind him as she walked toward him, her gaze never leaving his form. There was no expression on her face, no sign of approval or disappointment. She simply stopped in front of him, her eyes scanning his battered body, her lips curling into a faint, satisfied smile. "You passed the second phase," she said, her voice as calm as ever. "You proved you can survive the physical challenges. But there's more to this than just fighting. You'll need more than strength to make it through the rest of the tests." Lucas nodded, wiping the blood from his forehead. His entire body was sore, his muscles aching, but there was no time for rest. Zara had made it clear that this was just the beginning. "Now," Zara continued, "we move on to the final phase of your training. You're going to need more than just brute force to survive the challenges ahead. You'll need to think, to outsmart your enemies." Lucas couldn't help but wonder what else she had planned for him. But one thing was certain: he was ready. He had proven to himself that he could handle anything, and if he could survive Zara's training, he could survive whatever the galaxy had to throw at him. Lucas stood in front of Zara, his body sore and bruised from the intense training, but his spirit remained unbroken. The final phase was about to begin, and despite everything he had already gone through, there was a sense of uncertainty in his chest. He had survived the creature, passed the first 2 phases of his training, but Zara had made it clear that there was still much more ahead. What could she possibly throw at him next? Zara stood tall, her expression unreadable as usual. She studied him for a moment, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the room. "You've done well so far, human," she said, her voice as calm as ever. "But the galaxy is not kind to the weak. If you want to survive, you'll need to understand the deeper lessons. It's not just about physical strength. It's about survival, strategy, and knowing when to fight and when to outwit your enemy." Lucas nodded, though part of him was still unsure of how much more he could endure. His muscles felt like they were on fire, his body barely able to keep up with the constant demands Zara placed on him. But there was something inside him now afire that wouldn't go out. He had faced challenges that no human had ever experienced before, and he was still standing. He couldn't stop now. "Lead the way," Lucas said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion he felt. Zara didn't respond at first. She turned, walking toward the far side of the room. With a glance over her shoulder, she motioned for him to follow. "This phase is different," she explained as they walked. "You're going to face more than just physical tests. You're going to face your mind, your fears. You will be tested mentally, emotionally. You need to be ready for anything." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. Mental and emotional tests. He had no idea what to expect. But he knew one thing: he couldn't back down now. He had come too far to turn back. They entered another chamber, one that was smaller than the others he had seen before. It had a strange, almost oppressive atmosphere, as if the very air in the room weighed heavy on his shoulders. There were no windows, no visible exits, just 4 walls that seemed to close in on him with every passing second. Zara turned to face him, her expression still unreadable. "This room is where the final test begins. I want you to close your eyes and focus. You'll be surrounded by visions, illusions that will make you question what's real and what's not. Some of them will be your worst nightmares. Some will be your greatest desires. But you must not let them control you. You must find the strength to overcome them." Lucas didn't hesitate. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the room press down on him. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. His mind began to race, his thoughts spinning, unsure of what to expect next. Then the visions began. At first, it was subtle. He heard whispers, voices from his past. He saw flashes of faces: his parents, his friends, all of them smiling at him, reaching out to him. He felt a warmth in his chest, the comfort of home, a feeling of safety. But then the voices grew louder. His mother's face twisted into an expression of fear, her eyes wide with terror. His friends' faces became distorted, their smiles replaced by grimaces of pain. Lucas fought to push the images away, but they kept coming, flooding his mind with memories of things he had buried deep inside. His worst fears took shape before him: fear of failure, of losing the people he cared about, of being completely powerless in the face of overwhelming forces. He opened his eyes, but the illusions didn't disappear. They followed him, swirling around him like ghosts. His heart raced, and for a moment, he felt like he was suffocating under the weight of his own emotions. He wanted to run, to escape, but he couldn't. The room seemed to close in on him, the walls pressing tighter and tighter. Zara's voice broke through the chaos, cold and firm. Focus, human. These are only illusions. You control your mind. You control your fate. The only enemy here is yourself. Lucas clenched his fists, forcing himself to breathe through the panic that threatened to overwhelm him. His heart pounded in his chest, his mind flashing between his deepest fears and his greatest desires. He had spent so many years running from the pain of loss, from the fear of not being good enough. But now, in this moment, he had to face it all. He had to fight back. The images didn't stop. They never would. But Lucas realized that he didn't have to fight them directly. He couldn't erase the past or change what had happened, but he could accept it. He could learn to live with it, to move forward despite it. He focused on his breath, slowing his heartbeat, grounding himself in the present. The whispers grew quieter. The faces faded. Slowly, the darkness lifted, and the oppressive weight on his chest began to lift as well. The room stopped closing in on him, and the visions started to fade. Zara watched from a distance, her arms crossed over her chest. Her gaze was still sharp, but there was something different about it, now something like approval. "You did well," she said, her voice softer than before. "You didn't let your fears control you. That is a victory in itself." Lucas didn't speak right away. He was still catching his breath, his heart still racing, but there was a sense of relief washing over him. The hardest part of the test was over. He had faced the darkness within himself and survived. Zara stepped closer to him, her golden eyes still fixed on him. "You're not done yet, human. There's still more to learn. But I believe you're ready for whatever comes next." Lucas nodded, the weight of the moment settling in. He wasn't sure what else Zara had planned, but he knew one thing for sure: he was ready. Whatever challenges came next, he would face them with everything he had. Lucas felt the weight of Zara's words settle deep inside him. "You're ready?" The thought echoed in his mind, but there was a lingering sense of doubt that tugged at him. He had faced every challenge she'd thrown his way: physical tests, mental and emotional trials, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something more was coming, something far greater than anything he'd faced before. Zara didn't give him much time to think. The door slid open as they approached, revealing a vast, open space beyond. This wasn't like any room Lucas had seen before. The walls were lined with massive windows that looked out over a breathtaking view of the galaxy's countless stars, scattered across the endless void, each one representing a world with its own history, its own challenges. For the first time since he'd arrived on this ship, Lucas felt a true sense of awe. It was both beautiful and humbling to see the galaxy in all its vastness, its complexity. But it was also a reminder of how small and insignificant he was in the grand scheme of things. He stepped through the door, his eyes scanning the room. In the center, there was a large console, a glowing screen displaying a map of what appeared to be a star system. Several ships were in orbit around one of the planets, and their positions were marked with bright red dots. Zara walked toward the console and gestured for Lucas to join her. "These are the positions of several factions, some of them allies, some enemies. Your mission is to decide which path you'll take. You can use your strength to dominate, to take control of the galaxy, or you can choose to protect and guide. What you do next will shape the future. Lucas's heart raced as he looked at the screen. The factions were numerous, each one representing a different race, a different culture. Some of the factions appeared to be engaged in conflict, while others were united in some form of alliance. And then there were the planet's worlds that seemed to be on the brink of destruction, on the edge of chaos. "Why are you showing me this?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The weight of the situation was settling in. This wasn't just some test. This was a decision that could change everything. Zara's gaze softened for a moment. Just slightly, but her voice remained as calm and cold as ever. "Because you are the only one who can make it. You've proven that you have the strength to survive, but now you need the wisdom to lead. The galaxy is at a crossroads. What you choose will impact everything." Lucas looked at the screen again, his mind racing. He had always thought of himself as just another soldier, someone who followed orders without question. But now, Zara was asking him to make a decision that could shape the fate of entire worlds. What if he chose wrong? What if his decision led to war, to death? He had seen the destruction the galaxy was capable of, seen how quickly everything could crumble under the weight of conflict. But at the same time, what if he could do something more? What if he could protect those who needed it, bring peace to the chaos that seemed to reign everywhere? It wasn't just about strength anymore. It was about understanding the true meaning of power, the responsibility that came with it. Zara was silent, allowing him to think, giving him the space to make his decision. The map continued to glow before him, the ships and planets still moving across the screen. He could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on his shoulders, and for a moment he felt lost, unsure of which path to take. But then something shifted inside him. He remembered the training, the lessons Zara had forced him to learn. Strength wasn't about domination, it was about control. It was about using your abilities for something greater than yourself. Power wasn't about conquering, it was about protecting, about making a difference when the galaxy seemed determined to tear itself apart. Lucas straightened, the clarity he needed finally coming to him. His decision wasn't about fighting battles or gaining power for the sake of power. It was about standing up for what was right. "For those who couldn't protect themselves, I choose to protect," Lucas said, his voice steady and full of resolve. "I choose to guide, to help those who need it, to stop the galaxy from falling into chaos." Zara didn't smile, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Pride? Respect? It was hard to tell, but she nodded once, acknowledging his decision. "Then you've made the right choice," she said, her voice almost softer than it had ever been. "This will not be easy. The galaxy is full of threats, and you will face challenges far greater than anything you've faced so far. But now, you have the strength, the knowledge, and the heart to lead." Lucas felt a surge of determination as he looked back at the map. The galaxy was vast, its problems endless, but now he had a purpose. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a leader, and the galaxy would soon know that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The room was silent as Lucas stood before the map, his hand resting on the console. Zara's words echoed in his mind. "You have the strength, the knowledge, and the heart to lead." He had made his choice, and now the weight of that decision settled over him like a heavy cloak. He had chosen the path of peace, the path of protection, but that didn't mean the journey would be easy. Zara had made it clear that there were many challenges ahead. There were factions that wanted control, that thrived on chaos. The galaxy was filled with corruption, violence, and greed. It wasn't a place where a single person, even someone with as much potential as Lucas could change everything alone. But for the first time, Lucas didn't feel small. The fear that had once plagued him, the doubt that had threatened to undo him, had been replaced by something stronger, something unshakable. He could do this. He would do this. Not because he had to, but because it was the right thing to do. Zara moved silently behind him, her presence just as imposing as ever. She had been the one to push him, to challenge him, and now, it seemed, she was waiting for him to take the next step. "Now," she said, her voice firm, but not without respect, "you must begin. The galaxy won't wait for you to be ready. There will be no time to hesitate." Lucas nodded. "I understand." Zara's gaze softened just slightly, though it was fleeting. "You have proven yourself, Lucas. You are no longer just a soldier. You are a leader. The galaxy may be unpredictable, but you have what it takes to face it head-on. Use your strength, your mind, and your heart. And remember, you are not alone. In this, there are others who will stand with you." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. One final lesson, human. Lucas looked at her, his curiosity piqued. "What is it?" Zara's gaze met his, her golden eyes burning with intensity. "Never forget that the greatest power lies not in what you can take, but in what you are willing to give. Sacrifice will come, and it will test you more than any weapon ever will. The road ahead will demand much of you, but it will also give you the opportunity to change the fate of the galaxy. Be ready to make those sacrifices when the time comes." With that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving Lucas alone with his thoughts. He stood there for a moment, the weight of Zara's final lesson sinking in. Sacrifice. It was something he had heard about before, but now it took on anew. Meaning, the galaxy was vast, and the challenges ahead were far from simple. There would be battles, yes, but there would also be moments that would test him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. He had to be ready for those moments, ready to give what was needed, no matter the cost. But he wasn't alone. Zara had been right about that. There were others out there, others who would stand with him, fight alongside him, and help him face the trials ahead. They would all have to make choices, just as he had, and together they could make a difference. With renewed determination, Lucas turned back to the map. The factions, the planets, the conflicts, they were all just pieces of a larger puzzle. But now he had the tools to put it together. He had the strength, the mind, and the heart to lead. And it was time to take action. The galaxy wasn't going to wait, and neither would he. He stepped forward, his finger hovering over the console. The first step was clear. He would unite the factions. He would find the common ground that connected them all. He would bring peace, not through force, but through understanding and leadership. The future was uncertain, but one thing was for sure: Lucas was ready. The challenges would be many, but he was prepared to face them head-on, to protect the innocent, to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for a better future. And as he made his decision, a new chapter in the galaxy's story began. The end.